With a yo-ho-ho, it's TaleOfTheToaster, and welcome to another tier list video on Inazuma 11. This is pretty much one of the last Hissatsu-based ones we can ever make, because I'm going to be going over all of the new Hissatsus that were in Inazuma 11 Orion, the 8th season of the show. It's pretty much the last we can do until Victory Road introduces a whole load more. Otherwise, this is kind of a finale unless I go back and make a tactics one or a fighting spirits one, but I don't think I ever will because I just don't care strongly enough about them. But here for Orion, this is a mixed season because they've got a lot of moves which fly very under the radar, and some of them for good reasons, some of them not. And then sometimes they randomly just go insane and make some of the best that the series has ever had. I guess with an introduction like that, let's just go out of order. We're mostly going to be going alphabetical, but we can't save this one. Like, you cannot talk about Inazuma 11 Orion without talking about Last Resort. It is pretty much the theme of the season. You're introduced to it in the very first match, and it's still relevant even in the final match. And there's never really been a move in the series history that is meant to be important for that long. You know, all the other famous ones like God Hand and Fire Tornado will gradually get improved upon, whereas some of the late game strong stuff is meant to be a surprise for towards the end. This is the first time something's been a constant all the way through, so they needed to make sure it was going to be cool. It needed to sound cool, it needed to look cool, it needed to be unique, it needed to defy your expectations for what an Axel Blaze move would be like. And good grief, guys, they really, really did it. I am not going to undersell it whatsoever. You know, it feels like one of those where you could say, oh, I think it's a little bit overrated. No, it's not. Last Resort is genuinely just sensationally cool. The way it dips in and out of the ground repeatedly is so unexpected. It's, again, especially for Axel, and the way there are so many intricacies baked into the animation that you expand on as the series goes along when the characters are failing to copy it. It all just truly gives it a kind of unmatched aura, and I cannot punish it whatsoever. Likewise, its variants, Last Resort Sigma and Last Resort Dragon, is kind of overdoing it a bit. They needed Last Resort Sigma, I guess, to say if you're going to be getting multiple characters just to recreate one Last Resort, it's got to eventually get stronger, while the Dragon thing is just a surprise counterattack from the Italian team. So I obviously can't put them on the same standing as Last Resort, but it's still the same move at the end of the day. They couldn't be any lower than a single tier below. They're still very cool. There is one more variant, but we'll get to that one. So for now, we'll go back to the actual alphabetical order. And Artemis Ring is fine. It looks kind of a little bit weaker than all of the moves that Nishikage or Dusk Grayling had been doing up to that point. It looks nice, but just based on the fact it looks a little bit weaker than some of his previous moves, maybe holds it back a little bit. I would actually say the same for another move with an aligning character, namely that of Nausicaa or Heath Moore. It seems to have been left off the tier list somehow. I'm not sure how that's happened, but in Japanese it's called Gekomaru Tsubame Gaishi, which translates to Moonlight Circle Swallow Return, which to me is so awkward that the move basically doesn't even have a name. It's just that curving one that Heath does. That would also be in the D tier on account that, just like his goalkeeper buddy, it just looks a lot weaker than the moves he was throwing out in Ares, and it probably fits his personality better, but it doesn't make sense really as an upgrade from what he was doing before. It seems it's different, it's definitely different, but I don't feel like it's strictly more helpful. Onto the explosive lion thingy. This just looks nice. It is a move that I forgot about until I was doing research for this tier list, but I'm not going to hold it back because of that, because it's fitting on the China team, and it definitely looks the part. Bison Horn, though, don't really know what that has to do with South Korea. I guess it's more just the team having a bison theme in general for some reason, but it looks fine. There's also a dribbling variant here as well, Kamikaze Buffalo Train, and it's just exactly what you think it is. I might move these two down. I definitely like Artemis Ring a lot more, but we'll see. For now, let's just get back into the good stuff, because here we've got Black Shield and Black Field. It's very similar names, but one is from Eureka and the other is from the goalkeeper of the Orion Shadows of Orion team. I think Black Shield is low-key like one of the best goalkeeping moves they ever did. It's so vast and very, very believable as like a final goalkeeping move, but also looks the part in its own way, in a way that a move hadn't really done up to that point. This is one that I'd really love to see in games like Victory Road, and likewise the shooting move Black Field. I'll go at least a B tier on that. The only time it was ever used in the match, it was stated as kind of not being ready. It's not its time, so it'd be interested to see what it does look like when it's complete. But you know what? I think it is A tier actually, even on account of what we did already see. We've also got Blue Stardust, the dribbling move of Ichihoshi. Basically Stargazer, but as a dribble. And you know what? I love Stargazer, and this may be lifting the idea, but it does it in a way that makes sense, and it looks great. We'll have the first proper B tier with the Forgotten Sonata. It's a hard one to judge because I don't think you ever actually see it succeed in the show, but just purely based on having a music theme, I know that I'd like it. Runaway Chariot is good, albeit a little uninspiring. Burning Phoenix. Burning Hinatori. Why do we have this? There's been a Flaming Phoenix move in Inazuma 11 since Season 1. In fact, there's been multiple, really, if you think about it. And then, later in the same season, you actually see it. The US team with Eric and Bobby on it, Star Unicorn, they do the regular Phoenix. But this appears first, and the only real difference is that it's a one-person move and it ends in a headbutt. There's nothing new here to differentiate it from a move that has existed from the very, very beginning, and I have to really criticise that one straight to the F tier. But the positivity comes back because Carnival Shake, my word, this one caught me off guard. I had to kind of rediscover it at one point, because when I was first watching the Brazil match, I was kind of too down on the fact we've got another separate Brazilian team and their theme is exactly the same as last time. So I was kind of unfairly judging a lot of their moves. We'll especially get to Death Samba in a moment to go over that one. But Carnival Shake on rewatch, actually, you know what? This one gets a big pass. We didn't explicitly have any kind of move that sounded like that on the previous Brazil team, and the motions that go into this one are completely one of a kind. When you're 8 seasons into Inazuma 11, it can be really hard to come up with a Hissatsu that doesn't look or feel like previous ones. And yeah, this maybe has the feel of previous Brazil moves, but visually, it's got it all going on and it's boundlessly rewatchable. Carronade Cannon, meanwhile, makes me feel absolutely nothing. It's a ball coming out of a cannon. Death Crusher Zone, I also literally forgot that this move was a thing until starting this video. It is Death Zone, but overridden out of a polar pike, and looks exactly the same as a regular Death Zone otherwise. Sure. So Death Samba then. Let's just put it in F tier and go into a bit of detail, because I was watching a video essay on YouTube literally yesterday, just completely coincidence, but it was by Moon Channel. It was a video called Why Do Japanese Games Love Brazil? And it just talks about the way Brazilian culture is reflected in Japanese culture in general, and it's basically all about samba and dancing, and they've all got some typical design quirks. And Inazuma 11 was no exception to this. The first Brazilian team, it kind of does exactly what you would expect a Brazilian team to be like. And at least they had an Argentina team as well, because a kind of a failing of Japanese media at times can be that Brazil is the only South American country that gets representation. The main reason behind this is there's actually quite a significant Japanese population within Brazil, and then likewise many of them moved over to Japan at a later point in history. So they're more connected than you might think. But somehow results in all Japanese representation of Brazil just being about samba. And you can forgive it the first time, right? Because it's what everyone would expect a Brazil team to have. You can't have a Brazil team in Inazuma without at least having a samba move at one point. But to do it again, this is maybe more of a criticism on the Brazil team as a whole, because their match is actually quite cool. They do some good storytelling throughout it, but the team's theme is literally just the previous Brazil team from the OG season, but again with different people. And instead of having Samba Strike, this time we've got Death Samba, which is a 2-player shot that's Samba themed. And this is one of those game designer is running out of ideas moment. And we know that they're not, because they made Carnival Shake look so good, but this is just big samba move. But again, come on, man, give me something to work with here. Well, they definitely did with Diamond Ray. I can't remember if that was in the Ares tier list or not, because it does appear in Inazuma 11 Reloaded, just not within Ares itself. But just to be sure, let's have it in S tier, because it's just unbelievably cool. And again, it needed to be, but it didn't fall short of that whatsoever. We do also have Diamond Edge as a separate move, and I'm glad that it's there as a separate move, because it led to the whole evolution chain that we get with Mark Evans. Let's just do that gradually while we go on, because Diamond Edge, I think I'll stick it in B tier for now, because it does visually look a lot more awkward than Diamond Ray. This guy's stubby legs were not built for this angle whatsoever, but the fact that it does mix up Mark and do anything other than go in a straight line down the centre, it was important for the development, and actually getting Mark to do not just Diamond Hand, not just Diamond Arm, but also Diamond Punch in particular was come up with just in the moment to deal with Diamond Edge having been unplanned. This Diamond Arm at least took a bit of conversation on how to borrow some skills from Nishikage, while Diamond Arm was the original that's actually coming up with a good move for Mark. I love all of these, and it's hard to know where to put them in the tier list at the moment, because they literally occupy 4 spaces by themselves, and technically 5 if we include, Super God Hand. Let's just bunk these all together for now, because originally Mark's idea was to use a really small and concentrated God Hand to deal with exactly where Diamond Ray was going to be. I like that idea. It's taking a classic move and using it in a new way, so I definitely want to praise that. And then eventually, with all the diamond stuff going on, it kind of turns into a diamond hand, then diamond arm to grab from afar, then diamond punch to get rid of the diamond edge that had gone at a different angle. It feels all like one move at the end of the day, but one that I really, really like. They at least some of them might be worthy of A tier, but at the moment I don't really have the room. I guess technically the one that I've just put in S tier is Curving Diamond Ray, which is different to Diamond Edge, and then there's also regular Diamond Ray, but let's at least treat the curving one as the same move. Come on now. So now we get Double-Headed Eagle. It's a very boring name for a move. I could go here or here with it, to be honest. Let's just drop it there for now, because this is the only move on the Russia team to be actively themed around Russian stuff. Like, this was their symbolism on the coat of arms and stuff, to have a double-headed eagle, shared by a lot of countries like Albania and Serbia, but definitely found within Russia. And it's just turning that into a shot, which, the whole season is set in Russia. You've got to have a Russian-themed move. It just all feels a bit odd in the modern lens with current world situations. So to rate a move for being appropriately Russian, you get where I'm coming from, right? I can't be too positive or negative. Like, I can't criticise Inazuma for doing it, but I can't praise it for being what it is. Speaking of moves that became hilariously out of date, we've got Dynamic Corona, which it means it in the completely literal sense. It's the corona of the sun, and there was no corona something else at the time of Orion existing. But I also watched most of Orion while I was on a bit of time off work, dealing with what I thought might have been corona. Turns out it wasn't, but it still got me the time off. I just laughed the moment I saw it, and it's not their fault whatsoever, but ultimately there isn't too much to praise it for on an originality standpoint anyway, so let's just bung it in D tier. Fire Lemonade was one of my favourite moves. I think I put it in S tier for Aries. Fire Lemonade Rising. But my problem with Fire Lemonade Rising is that we never got the chance to see Fire Lemonade Regular Edition just used normally in a match. You see it at the end of Aries in the season finale where it's a whole drawn out 2-minute affair where it's the characters talking over it. You've got an attempt where he tries it on Mark Evans in training and it just kind of doesn't work. And then basically the next time you see Fire Lemonade in the show, it's already Fire Lemonade Rising. I feel like we just missed the chance to see a normal rendition of Fire Lemonade. And this is a very awkward way to evolve it, just making it float. Like, how is that working? I enjoy the episode that leads up to it, and it's still an evolution of one of my favourite moves, but it's a bit of an odd direction. And then we got Firewall. It's a flaming wall of fire. They had to have one at some point, but the later it debuted in the series, the more flat it was going to feel to have such a generic idea. And when it's in the first match of Orion, it did genuinely sow the seeds of, oh, maybe they really have run out of ideas for moves when you've got the likes of Firewall. And also, let's just find it now. Yeah, here we go, Red Break. So we had Firewall on the goalkeeper and Red Break on the striker of the South Korea team, alongside the two Bison moves, which haven't done very well. Basically, Orion set a really poor first expectation, with the South Korea team being a bunch of dirty cheaters who just took away your chance to have a normal match right at the start of the season, and then all of their moves were boring. You know what? The Bisons are coming down as well, because they do drop by association. But Red Break in particular is literally a flaming kick. What more can I say? It's a backflip, I guess. Maybe it would look cooler in a game where you can spam it more often, but it inspired zero imagination in me, and it might just be the worst. Thankfully, Orion did actually recover very, very quickly, and we had stuff like Fujin Rajin Ghost, a natural evolution on a move that I already liked. Why have 2 margins when you can have 3 to cover a specific area? And I guess that naturally brings us on to the Asura, which is specifically my favourite of them. Let's put it here, because it actually is the first goalkeeping move since, like, Infinite Wall to actually get some defenders involved, except those defenders are actually other goalkeepers in the form of Nishikage and Dave Quagmire. I was so glad that Dave Quagmire could finally do something in the season and also have it be so overshadowed. Like, he's doing something, but it's still Mark's move at the end of the day, but as a counter to a move that was specifically attacking from above, on top of a move that looked like it had already fully evolved. Fujin Rajin Ghost looks totally complete, but for one specific scenario, it wasn't. So they came up with the Asura, and it got other goalkeepers involved. That was a new concept. I'd never seen it before. Really liked it. I guess we might as well go with the other goalkeeping move that did that. Kamakura Dimension I will put in C tier for now, because this one strictly does work with defenders, and 2 of my absolute favourites. You've got Hunter Foster and Mizukamiya Akaris combining with Nishikage, so that's 3 of my favourite characters in a single move, and it all looks pretty good. You don't necessarily know what the defenders are really adding to it, but I think the main thing that suffers with it is the move basically, like, doesn't have a name in my mind. What is Kamakura D or Kamakura Dimension? I looked it up, and apparently it's named after some Japanese snow festival, and it's like, what? But why? It's like surrounded by diamonds or crystals, and it's like, I love that they're getting these 3 characters to do a move, and overall it looks fairly good, but it just doesn't come together when the name's so completely irrelevant. Speaking of bad names, you've got GGG Sensho no Aria. This is the point of the video where I mentioned, by the way, this is not the only video I'm making about Orion Hissatsus. I'm doing the tier list now, but hopefully very soon you will also see me make a video coming up with new dub names for all of the Orion Hissatsus. So if you want to leave any suggestions for that video in the comments, I may have already recorded it by that point, but I'd love to at least show some off in editing, if nothing else. GGG Senjo no Aria is one of those moves where it looks really cool, and it's again an unexpected partnership of B-Tech Jack Wallside, Aphrodite, and Xavier Schiller, but it loses so many points when the name is actively off-putting. It's like a reference to a song, a piece of classical music called Air on G String, and the GGG is meant to stand for God, Golem, God. Because, you know, Aphrodite's a god, but Xavier's a god. I don't care. This name sounds ridiculous, and the move, it looks good, but not so good that I can forgive such an unbelievably poor name. Some people might also say that God Hand of Friendship is a poor name. I don't mind that one. It sounds cringe, but in an adorable kind of way. Like, he's run out of God Hands at this point, to the point where in-universe he hadn't even named it yet. He did the move, just called it God Hand, and he was like, actually, you know what, this is different. I guess I'd call it the God Hand of Friendship or something. And it's a more realistic, I'm going to come up with a name. I'm going to call it Frenzied Folly. You know? It's not going to be good on the spot, which makes you wonder all about moves like Kamakura D. It's like, well, where did that name come from? God Hand of Friendship, it loses a bit because it's kind of the exact same motions as Double God Hand or some of the various others from Go that kind of, maybe even Omega Hand that kind of eclipses the ball and then makes it disappear. So it's not too original, but it's a nice surprise to go back to God Hand at the very end in a new-ish way. I'm quite a big fan, you know, of military satellite Phobos. It's totally outlandish, and it shows the goalkeeper doing absolutely nothing to help out. And maybe there's something to be said by the US team relying on a military satellite to stop the ball, but it's funny, and you know, it just makes me smile that they gave the satellite a name. Like, is there a real Phobos up there in the Inazuma universe? Maybe. I think my S tier is looking the most normie it's ever looked, but all three of the S tier moves are just straight up cool, objectively powerful looking goal scoring moves. But Glacial Gungnir by Sean and Aiden Frost, oh my word, they went unnecessarily hard with this one. And, I guess it was necessarily hard because it needed to get Sean removed from the team due to injury or whatever to send him off on his silly little side plot. But, you know, they didn't have to go all the way in. Like, Sean didn't have to completely freeze over. He didn't have to bear the brunt of this entire thing directly on his leg, but they make it look amazing. Aiden Frost doesn't have to do like 4 backflips and then turn away from the camera as it goes over to the goal, but they really push the boat out with this one, and it absolutely hits. And it's one of those where it works as a one-time thing. If we had to see it even a second time, it might lose its impact a bit, but this is something that I strictly remember, and it is the only thing that I remember Sean Frost for in Orion. Something that I don't want to remember is Inazuma Break Code Great. Why is it called Code Great? Why is it even a different move in the first place when all that changes is that they kick more from above and it's got a night sky or night space background with a siren blaring? It's not really expanding on the original Inazuma Break concept at all, and it came in the middle of a match where there was new moves appearing left, right and centre. This felt like we're calling this a new move for the sake of having a new move. One of those new moves that appeared, though, was Planet Break, and that one was actually pretty good. I'm not the biggest Ichihoshi fan, as I said, but both of his moves, I can't fault them. We didn't get to see this for too long, but it's a good idea. Innocent Drive is one that was off to a really good start. I love the setting of the mirrored halls, and it's a way to give a cool move to Russia's big bad striker without making it directly super Russian in origin. I just feel it's a little unsatisfying how they don't actually kick the ball. I say they because the kind of imposter Sonny also uses this move. They don't kick the ball, more they kick towards it, and then a beam of light comes out of their foot to hit the ball, and that just makes it feel a lot less satisfying than it otherwise would. If you look at what moves I've got coming up next, I definitely at least have to jump the queue first and talk about Shark the Deep. I think B tier at least would be appropriate for this one, but this is a good move. This is the one that I think of when I think of Hissatsu. Like, his whole penguins thing they like to joke about, but you still do think of Jude and the rest of Royal Academy when you think of Inazuma penguin moves. Your mind doesn't naturally jump to Hissatsu. But Shark the Deep, that is universally his, and there's nothing else quite like it. The closest thing would be Megalodon, but this fixes the problem of Megalodon by actually seeing someone kick the ball properly. So Shark the Deep, it doesn't like speak to me that personally, but it does look really good for the character that's using it. Well, Emperor Penguin number 2 featuring Shark. It just makes me laugh. Why am I reviewing a move called Emperor Penguin number 2 featuring Shark? It gets me some Kamiya in there, and like, Emperor Penguin number 2 is not a bad move. I can't just call this a bad move. Well, it's not like Inazuma Break Code Great, where it's trying to be a new move on top of it. This is Emperor Penguin number 2, the same move we've already loved, except now it's got a shark in it, and it's like, I can't praise it in a way that makes it sound good, because it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in a way that makes me laugh, and I think that's overall a good thing. Maybe I'll let you go on then. I'll put it in C tier, because it is too funny. Oh, you know what else is funny? We have to ruin the S tier now. Macaroni spaghetti. More specifically, macaroni spaghetti with extra sauce might just be one of my favourite goalkeeping moves they've ever made. Like, it's on an Italian... Oh, no, this is on the Brazil team. But both Brazil and Italy, they have the same problem in Orion of most of the moves are just based on things from Brazil and Italy, which we'll go into more detail on as it goes along. There is actually a separate entry here for extra sauce, so let's just have that one alone. This was the classic example of, okay, it's just a thing. They're going to name it after actual spaghetti, but it's spaghetti that I eat all of the time. I am a huge macaroni cheese microwaver, and then when it comes back for a second time called macaroni spaghetti with extra sauce, I actively laughed out loud, and that has to be rewarded. I actually think fairly highly of Margin the Wave. I'm not a big Margin the Hand enjoyer traditionally. I think it's just, I didn't sign up to Inazuma for the genies and the fighting spirits and stuff, but I more like what this represents because Sandra as a goalkeeper had been struggling to come into her own. She wasn't initially picked for the team. In fact, she had to come up with a move that would justify her being on the squad, but the only way she could think of was to copy a move from Mark Evans. And they discuss the morality of that in conversation with them. And obviously Mark reassures her that it's fine to steal moves from each other or borrow and inspire moves from each other. It's basically a parallel to Darren LeChance actively taking the same moves as Mark in Season 3, and people were calling him out for it. This time it's a move inspired by Mark. And what Mark does to reassure Sandra is to steal Nishikage's move, as we saw with Diamond Arm. And I just think it's great in Universe to give the message of, yeah, as long as we're addressing that we've taken someone else's move, absolutely, it's great. We want to win matches. We should be borrowing from each other. If it just wasn't explained at all, then I'd think, damn, they really made her just do Margin the Hand but water. But because it's in universe something she was self-conscious about, because it is unoriginal, that's what makes it good. One of the hardest ones I would say for me to rate would be Maximum Circus. At the moment, I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. It could potentially be an A tier with some adjustment. But Caleb Stonewall had gone the entire Inazuma 11 series without ever having a move that was uniquely his own. Until Orion, they gave him a shooting move, and we didn't really know what his theme was going to be, because he's gone this far into the series without actively having one he can show off on his moves other than just being powerful. So Orion says, alright, well, he was the joker of the team in Season 3, the wild card on the bench. This time, let's literally make him a clown and give him a circus-themed move. The type of thing we'd never had in Inazuma before. There isn't anything too unique about it at the end of the day to put it to the top. It's just, I'm going to summon a few footballs and then I'm going to kick it and it's going to be colourful. But I'm so glad that they gave Caleb a move of his own, because they didn't have to at the end of the day. He didn't have one in Aries, but he's got one now and I like it. Mouth of Truth is a little hard to view in isolation, because whenever you're watching that move, you're going to be subjected to the absolute pain that Gabriella is going through while trying to stop the ball with her power-up thingies attached. But I really do like the summoning animation, and the idea of it, again, it's a real thing that's in Italy, literally called the Mouth of Truth, but in Italian. And they're like, let's make this a goalkeeping move, but I suppose even Colosseo Guard was that. It is fine, nothing too extraordinary. Likewise, Orion Cross Viper is before Blackfield, the big shot of your main antagonist of the season, and it kind of lives up to that without going beyond. But oh no, if we are sticking to alphabetical order, that means it's time. It is time to talk about my favourite move in the whole season, and it might just be top 2 or top 3 for Inazuma 11 as a whole. I think my number 1 would be Stargazer. I've got a lot of ironic appreciation for stuff like Acrobat Bomber, but over Cyclone... Is this just me? Or is this one of the best things I've ever seen in the entire series? I know that I'm a little bit unusual for really liking the Orion adaptation of Basil Hardy, of Kozoumaru, the way he just turns into an Axel ripoff, but I really didn't like him in Aries, so I was very glad for Orion to just go the whole hog and make him a complete Axel ripoff. But this time, this is a season where Axel's got something incredible to rip off. He's got Last Resort, and the whole team is trying to achieve this as a 3-player shot and still failing. In comes Basil Hardy to not only do Last Resort, but make it completely different visually, and it's so extra. It's got all the movements of Last Resort. You can tell where he's got it from. This is a guy who spammed Fire Tornado for an entire season. He's obviously going to steal Last Resort, but the fact that he can do it at all is hugely significant at this point of the time, because this is something that not even 3 people combined can do. This guy's not only done it, and by the way, let it not go forgotten, he does also do the real Last Resort later in the season by himself. Sunny and Heath and Hizaki, they can't say that one, can they? I keep saying Hizaki instead of Elliot Ember. But this is not just Last Resort, it's the thing. It is worthy of having its own name, because the way it clips through the trees, it starts in a cave, and then it summons an entire stampede of weird-ass looking savannah animals. I don't even know how to call. Bro turned Last Resort into the Lion King. Where did this come from? It is absolutely unfounded, but I can watch it again and again and again, because Last Resort is already one of the best moves they ever made for Inazuma 11, and then this steals on it in such a hilariously what the heck kind of way. Oh, Over Cyclone is always going to be one of my favourite Hissatsus in the entire series, and I would love to know what you guys think of it. Yes, you can have another one for the general idea of stealing moves. Penguin the God and Devil sounds unbelievably awkward when you say it like that, but it's meant to. At the end of the day, it was meant to be either one guy doing Penguin the God or the other one doing Penguin the Devil. It's a nice send-off for Hizaki doing all of his Penguin moves before we finally get him onto the Shark, but the way the light and dark collides in this just looks beautiful, and I do really appreciate seeing a move that's kind of come up with by accident. Just in general, we like to see where moves come from in Inazuma. That was one of the main failings, I guess, of Aries and Orion. With the less amount of episodes it could have, moves just kind of had to come out of nowhere without talking about their origins too much, but this one you absolutely see where it came from, and it kind of looks awesome. Perseus Orb really kind of doesn't. It's so forgettable. Take a Pinch is also like a nice idea. We've never had a pinching move like this before, but it is belonging to Russia, who are meant to be the final boss of this whole thing, and it looks a bit too weak for that kind of status. Red Hot Chili Meteor certainly does, and I'm going to put that at the front of C tier. Let's do a little bit of rearranging like that, shall we say. It's one that you only really get to see mid-conversation and not a move that you see used in isolation, but it's used in story very, very well for Ichihoshi's breakout, and it's got a funny name. Requiem Dust, I'm not sure how to feel on this one because I love music-themed moves in Inazuma, but this one is music by virtue of he sings a bit before kicking the ball in a straight line, and it doesn't sound so great. The way it's delivered, and the move is so like unnecessarily aggro in the background, and it doesn't really suit what he's doing. Spinning Fence for Nathan. This is one where I don't want to criticize it too much. I might move it up to B tier because it's not very interesting to look at, but it also shouldn't be, because Nathan Swift has been overdue to have this move for about 10 years. He's always been a defender since the first minute of the first game, and he never got a defensive move his entire time in the show until Orion, where they finally gave him an actual defending move in Spinning Fence. By the time of Orion, it kind of looks a little bit uninspired and boring, but the way you can kind of answer back to that is that Spinning Fence could have happened all the way back in Season 1 if he'd trained for that specific purpose. He was ultimately, despite being a defender, never really trying to be a defender in the Inazuma seasons. Orion was the first time he fully committed to the bit of actually defending. And I feel like Spinning Fence therefore could have happened at any point in the series' history, and this would look right at home in the original trilogy. Sun's Guillotine is good. Sunrise Blitz? What the hell, Sunny Wright? Who let you go this hard on a move? Especially the final chain one where the actual finger guns is part of it. Like, Golden Gull was kind of flashy and it looked nice. Sunrise Blitz? Why did they make Sunny have such a cool move? I feel like this move is not very celebrated because it belongs to Sunny Wright, but if you gave this exact same move to someone like Axel Blaze or Soul Daystar or just about anyone that's actually popular in the fandom, Sunrise Blitz would be talked about as a bloody phenomenal move. It's actually so intense, and if you've forgotten what it looks like, which granted I also did before making this tier list, I urge you to look at it again. Just pretend it's your favourite character doing it. Super Megaton Head, it exists. Sword of Artagnan, yeah, that exists as well. Oh hey, I finally found Heath's Moonlight move. There it is next to Artemis Ring, like I always planned. Okay, we already talked about the Asura, so let's actually talk about the China moves it was dealing with. The acrobatic Sky Bullet one, I'm going to limit it to B tier because we absolutely saw it too much. It definitely kind of impacted on the viewing experience, watching the whole setup for it time and time again. And even though I wanted to see the gradual development of stuff like the Asura, it maybe took one too many tries to actually get there, you could say. We were very much overexposed to this move over the course of one match. But the idea of something that goes from super, super high up and lands to the point where it's behind the goalkeeper before it goes in the net, that's great. And the acrobatics look good as long as you're not having to watch it too much. Then we had the opposite. China has another shooting move called Heaven and Earth Fissure. Do you remember Heaven and Earth Fissure? Because I sure didn't remember Heaven and Earth Fissure. I spent the whole China match waiting for them to do another special move, and by the time they did, it was too late. Like, this move doesn't even score because they got so many goals with this one. I'm using my cursor to talk about the ones I'm on about, but you can't even see that. In the China match, they score like 3 or 4 goals with Sky Bullet, and then once it's finally beaten, they bring out Heaven and Earth Fisher, which it's too late at this point. Japan's already on their comeback arc, so it doesn't score. But you know what? As a uniting of Heaven and Earth move, it does look good, and I don't blame you for forgetting it, because it was only in the show once, but that is a heck of a key visual there with the cracked sky and the cracked earth with the text over it. That looks great, and I wish we could have seen that twice, and then Sky Bullet maybe a little bit less, and then I think both of them would be very well recognised as moves. I'm going to put a goalkeeping move right in front of the Asura, because the bubbles, the Boyon, I love it! I'm sure it's just me, but the goalkeeper turning into this bubbly thing and just the way his voice clip sounds like it's underwater. It's such an unexpected thing to have on the Spain team of all places. At this point, we'd gotten quite used to most of the goalkeeping moves, and even a lot of the moves in general in Orion just being very actively themed around things in the country. The bubbles is just a totally original concept that they happened to give to Spain, which is also a contender for one of the best matches in the whole Inazuma 11 series, and that is a big part of it. It looks weird and silly, but it genuinely does look hard to beat. It's one of those few cases where the goalkeeper of a team in Inazuma doesn't look like they'd be a good goalkeeper, but with the introduction of special moves, they can completely prove me wrong. Dragon Fang thing is one of those very, this could only belong to this country kind of goalkeeping moves, but this one's actually pretty awesome, to be fair. It doesn't look that strong, but it shouldn't have to. It's in the national finals rather than the later stages of the tournament, and you had to make a comeback on China somehow, who were mainly scoring off the back of the Sky Bullet thing. I don't feel too strongly one way or the other. But I feel incredibly strongly about the Shelter, a move that was designed to stop Last Resort. And again, most of these tiers are unordered for now. I do a bit of ordering at the end, but the S tier is always in order. So, you know what, let's do it like this. The Shelter, I forgot about it until the second time I was watching Orion, and it caught me off guard on my rewatch, essentially. I was like, wait, where did that come from? And once again, it's on the Spain team with no connections to Spain. It's just they clearly put their best ideas for moves onto Spanish giants, whatever they're called. But the Shelter gives me such Robot Wars introductory theme song vibes, the way it's just all these different doors of security closing on each other. If you're a Robot Wars fan, you'll get it, and if you haven't watched Robot Wars, you won't. But Robot Wars is one of my favourite things of all time, so the fact that I'm getting vibes of my favourite show in my other favourite show, thanks to the Shelter, and it's still being super cool even without that link, yeah, that's going in S tier. To be honest, I want to have Overcyclone and Last Resort back-to-back visually, but I think The Shelter is genuinely my number 2. It's below Overcyclone, but I like it even more than Last Resort. Oh, I'm going to use so much of The Shelter when I can get it on a team member in Victory Road. Time Trance is totally a really good move on a character that I absolutely can't stand, which does drag it back a bit. This is one that you're kind of necessarily overexposed to. You see it a lot, but that's because it's genuinely a very hard one to solve. So to be honest, if I'm being fair, yeah, it is at least a B tier move. Even if that Satan guy can bugger off, Time Trance itself, I can't fault it. Tricera Shield, we again don't really get to judge it without watching Italian football players completely writhing in pain. And even before that, it's just Triceratops themed, but the goalkeeper himself was a fan-submitted design who was made to look like a Triceratops, so their hands were tied. They had to make a Triceratops move. Twin Lancer, I feel nothing. And now we get to, I would say, the final move that we really have to talk about, which is Unbalanced Pisa. A 4-player shot, one of the first of its kind, by the way. But this one really did just feel a bit insulting. Mainly because when I saw that there was going to be Italy in Orion, if it was Orpheus, That would have been great. I would have loved more screen time out of Orpheus. But instead, they're all just retconned, and now it's a completely different Italian team. So to justify that, they were going to have to do something special to replace literally one of the most well-loved Inazuma opponent teams in history. And what we instead got was just a team that happens to be Italian, and they've got a goalkeeping move based on a real Italian artifact. And they've got a shooting move which literally involves them running up the Leaning Tower of Pisa and kicking the ball with it. This is such surface level Italian knowledge. Like, Orpheus, I think, really hit the mark with stuff like Odin's Sword, which was kind of loosely Italian looking, and it's believably something that an Italian striker would do. But if you grew up in the country of Italy and wanted to become a footballer, would you really come up with a move based on the Leaning Tower of Pisa? No, that's what other people from outside Italy think of the country, not what people within Italy care about. It just reeks of, oh yeah, we gotta do something Italian. Pisa, I guess, an unbalanced Pisa is such an awkward name. I'm not quite gonna put it in F tier because it's a little bit funny and it looks alright. It's better than the pure boredom of the 4 that I've got in F tier, but oh, it really stung when I was already unhappy about Orpheus being replaced by these bozos. But that's basically it. Technically, this physical trainer guy, the healing dude, leave a comment if you know what his name is. He has a Hissatsu technique outside of football entirely. It's just a healing thing. I think it's called Healing Wish. I've watched Orion in full twice, and I didn't even realise this counted as a Hissatsu technique until about 20 minutes before I started recording this video. But you can technically consider it a Hissatsu and put it in the tier list if you want. I think I'll leave it off. The other ones I've got are just regular macaroni spaghetti, curving Diamond Ray, a second Forgotten Sonata, I guess, and then there's another Diamond Ray and another Fujin Rajin. This one was called Diamond Dish because it was Diamond Ray but food themed for a filler episode, and it's like, yeah, alright, I'm not actually going to put this in the tier list, but here we go. I'm going to do a quick bit of rearranging. And here is the final thing. I pushed Diamond Ray into A tier just to make room for the logo without it overlapping. It is still S tier in my opinion. But here is everything, I would say, fully ordered. Even within the tiers, this is just my actual best to worst. At the end of the day, there's only 4 that I would put in F tier, but there's still quite a few forgettable ones in E tier. But by the same token, this is quite a busy top end. I think Orion is overall a little bit underrated for its Hissatsus, and if you felt that a lot of them were being unoriginal, I'd really just challenge you to try and come up with some Hissatsus of your own, because it's actually quite hard, and I think overall Orion did a good job, even if it had some stinkers. So look forward to my video where I come up with dub names for all of these moves, and I'll see you in another video.